I froze when my wife said, "I can't stand him anymore." It slipped out of her mouth in the hallway outside the maternity ward, where the disinfectant stung my nose, and the fluorescent lights made everyone look a shade past human. She thought I'd kept walking to the vending machine for a black coffee, but I was standing there with my duffel bag hanging off my shoulder and a hospital form shaking in my hand, the line for Farler glaring at me like a whir. There was a DNA envelope tucked in the outer pocket of that bag, one I'd bought late at night from a drugstore off I-35 even though I hated myself for doing it, and there was a crumpled credit card bill in my back pocket I hadn't stopped thinking about for 3 days. Omni Hotel, Capitol Grill, charges that didn't match the life we lived on my concrete man's schedule and pay. I'm Jack Mercer, 45, and I've poured concrete in Dallas for 20 years, hands scarred but steady, a man who knows how to turn rebar and slurry into something that holds up a family. Or at least, I used to believe that. The nurse called my name with a patient smile, the kind that's learned not to pry. The social worker waited by the door with a clipboard. Somebody's baby cried down the hall in a thin, broken siren. And the vending machine ate my dollar, like even it was tired of my indecision. I remember thinking, if I just sign the line, I can delay whatever storm is hunting me for one more day. But storms don't ask permission. They roll in when they're good and ready. Dallas isn't a city so much as a heat mirage built on grease and grit and Friday night optimism. I grew up in Oak Cliff, learned to back a truck with a trailer before I could shave, and found out the rhythm of my life would be the rhythm of a bull float smoothing fresh cement at sunrise. That slow, steady glide until the surface reflects the sky. My name's Jack Mercer, and I build things that last, I used to say when folks at the diner asked what I did. Like the answer explained the scabs on my knuckles and the way my t-shirts always smelled like dust. I met Leah at a cookout in a friend's backyard in Lake Highlands, the kind of July Saturday where the air wobbled over the grill and the grass stuck between your toes. She came carrying a tray of garlic bread, laughing at some joke I didn't hear, and the sun found its way into her hair like it was navigating by instinct. We locked eyes when I reached for a beer, Bud Light, because that's what we drink here without being fancy, and she said, "You look like you don't slip." I said, "That's the job." Later that night, we sat on the tailgate of my Ford F-50 and split a paper plate of ribs, sauce on our fingers, talking about nothing until nothing turned into everything. I took her for coffee at a diner near White Rock Lake, the kind with a bacon smell that has seeped into the paint, where the waitress calls everyone hon, and refills happen like small blessings. We went to a high school football game on a Friday, sat under bleachers that hummed with teenage nerves and marching band brass, cheering for kids whose names we didn't know because that's part of the ritual here, the weekly sermon about hope. We were good then. Sundays were for BBQ at my brother's place, Leah standing beside me at the grill, stealing pieces of brisket and complaining I was going to salt us into early graves. Weeknights tasted like garlic pasta in a pan we never bothered to measure from, ESPN murmuring from the living room while she curled on the couch with her laptop, toes tucked under a blanket Grandma had knit years back. We took road trips in the F-150 with a cooler and a CD binder we couldn't quit even after Spotify made us museum pieces, driving out to Palo Duro, to Fredericksburg in wildflower season, to a hilltop in some nowhere county where the sky looked like it had been poured from a bucket. When we bought our starter ranch off Abrams, 3 bedrooms, a yard that needed work, beige carpet begging for mercy, I hung our wedding photo in a brushed silver frame on the hallway wall and taped her first Valentine's card inside the coat closet so we'd bump into it every winter and remember. "I like our small," she told me one night while we ate pancakes for dinner because money was tight but joy wasn't. Small is honest. I believed her. I believed the way she leaned into my shoulder when we watched storms roll across the prairie on TV, as if we were rehearsing for the life's bigger weather. When Leah got the marketing job downtown, I cheered her on. She'd always had a whip-smart streak and a way with people that made bosses lean in. Her new office had glass walls and a coffee machine that tasted like vacation. I'd pick her up sometimes, me in a dust-coated truck among polished SUVs, and she'd run out with high heels in one hand, flats on her feet, laughing at the image we made, Blue Collar Meets Boardroom weekly series. And we used to joke about how different our worlds were, but differences are spark if you're careful and fire if you're not. Still, we kept the rituals. Friday Whataburger on the tailgate, Saturday morning yard work with her sun hat tilted like a movie poster, Sunday phone calls to her mom who always wanted to know when we would give her a grandbaby. "When we're ready," Leah would say, and she'd glance at me with that soft question in her eyes. I was happy to answer, with a kiss instead of a calendar. The first hairline crack, every man who works with concrete knows to look for them, was small enough to ignore. A new friend from work named Brittany, all lashes and opinions, started showing up in stories Leah told. "Britt says we need to get out more," Leah would say. Or, "Britt swears this wine bar will change your life." I didn't mind at first. I'm not jealous of hangouts that involve cheese boards. But then there were late nights at the office that didn't match the kind of campaigns they ran, and a new habit of keeping her phone face down on the kitchen counter, like its screen had become a moth she didn't want me to notice. "Girls' night," she'd say with a tone like an automatic door, and I'd nod and put ESPN on to let the noise fold around the house until it felt less empty. She started filling our home with small upgrades, throw pillows that cost more than tires, candles that smelled like places that didn't exist. "We deserve nice things," she'd croon, and I'd think about rebar and invoices and how I could pick up a side pour next weekend. It wasn't one comment, it was a drip. A glance that ricocheted against the mirror when I walked in. Brittany on the patio telling a story about her ex who ruined her for life, and Leah laughing a shade too loud. It was a Saturday we went to the state fair, and she went quiet in the Ferris wheel, just as the car we were in paused over a city that looked both infinite and suddenly far away, and she said, "Sometimes I wonder if we're just compatible." "Compatible like what?" I asked, trying to make it a joke we could outrun. "Like roommates who learn to be affectionate," she said, staring past me, and then she squeezed my hand as if the squeeze could pull the words back. The next morning she made pancakes shaped like hearts and kissed my neck while ESPN droned, and I told myself we all have off days, that marriage is a long job with occasional weather delays. But I started noticing how often her lipstick looked like it had been reapplied before she came home, how she'd carry herself with a brightness that felt imported, like sunlight from a window I hadn't been allowed to see. Money got weird for a minute, too. We'd always been careful. A little envelope in the kitchen drawer for cash tips and odd jobs. Walmart receipts rubber-banded with a fierce love of balancing the books. Then I found a crumpled slip in her purse one Tuesday when she asked me to grab her chapstick, gas receipt from a station nowhere near her office, a timestamp that put her in a part of town where Omni Hotel neon hums like a secret. I didn't want to be the man who checks anything. I wanted to be the man who trusts. But trust is a muscle, and sometimes you realize it's been lifting a weight you can't name. I put the receipt back where I found it and carried the knowledge around like a pebble in my boot. Annoying, real, too easy to pretend isn't there until you step wrong and it stabs. That night, she came home lit up about hitting our Q3 metrics, hugged me with arms that felt tired, and set her phone face down on the counter. "How was the pour?" she asked, voice bright but eyes somewhere else. "Steady," I said, "like always." We bought a little silver frame for another photo. Us at the lake last fall, wind turning her hair pirate wild, my grin big enough to be a billboard for belief. I hung it in the hallway next to our wedding shot and noticed for the first time how the distance between the two frames was a metaphor I didn't want. She started keeping a gym bag in her trunk, said the office added a wellness program. I found a hotel key card under the passenger seat when I vacuumed the truck on a Saturday, the kind with generic branding and gilt, small enough to slip into a pocket. "What's this?" I asked, holding it up by the corner like a dead moth. "Oh," she said, unbothered. "Britt grabbed my keys the other day and borrowed the car to run an errand. She must have dropped it. You know Britt." I nodded, because that's what you do when a story arrives dressed like a neighbor. Later, in the half-light, her phone buzzed and lit the ceiling, and she turned it over to hush it like a crying baby. I rolled onto my side and watched the ceiling fan carve the dark into slow spirals. Felt my jaw tighten against words I wasn't ready to say. I kept telling myself I was building something worthy, something enduring, and that every build hits a phase where the structure looks wrong until the next pour makes sense of it. I told myself our mismatched schedules were the price of dreams. I told myself the dull ache in my chest was just age, and the soft alarm was just my dad's voice warning me not to lose a good thing by being suspicious. On a Thursday, I came home early from a job, because rain chased us off the slab, and I found a stack of mail on the kitchen counter held down by a candle that smelled like Tuscany at dusk. On top, a credit card bill with our names. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe because there are moments in a man's life when he can feel God, or fate, or the ghost of his best self, tilting his chin toward truth. Inside, Omni Hotel, Capitol Grill. Dates and times that lined up too neatly with the nights I'd eaten Whataburger alone and pretended it tasted the same. My breath went shallow. My hands remembered how to hold a trowel steady in the wind. I slid the bill back into the envelope and placed it under the candle like I could smother it. That night, Leah leaned in the doorway while I watched a rerun of a game, and in a voice that tried to sound casual, she asked, "Do you ever feel unmet?" I looked up at her and felt the ground quiver under a house I hadn't realized was already settling wrong. We still had our routines. Friday tacos at the food truck lot on Abrams, church twice a month when the guilt of skipping built up, laundry folded on the bed while she played a podcast about owning your truth. I kept grabbing the wedding photo off the wall to dust it, like polish could fix time. We drove out to see the leaves near Broken Bow one weekend, and she slept most of the way home with her head against the window, while I watched the highway unspool and asked the empty cab questions. I wasn't brave enough to ask her. When she woke up, she reached for my hand, squeezed it, and said, "You know I love you, right?" "I know," I said, and the words felt like they came from a man 2 seats over. Which brings me back to the hallway outside the maternity ward, the vending machine that wanted to steal my dollar, the hospital form with a line daring me to claim a life, and my duffel bag with a DNA envelope that I carried not because I wanted to prove something, but because some part of me had already been asked to. Leah's voice from around the corner, "I can't stand him anymore," was a whisper sharp enough to cut. Maybe she was talking to a nurse about the pain. Maybe she was talking to Brittany on the phone. Maybe she was talking about me in a way that had nothing to do with labor and everything to do with the slow drift we'd both allowed. I took a breath that tasted like antiseptic and coffee and fear, and I thought about the first Valentine's card taped in our closet and the photo frames on our wall and the gas receipt in her purse and the hotel charges that sparkled on a page like broken glass. Back then I thought we were building forever. I didn't realize forever had an expiration date. The first real crack came one Tuesday night when Leah slid her phone face down on the counter with a casualness that felt rehearsed, like an actress dropping a prop between takes. She had started doing it often, texts muted, screen hidden, as if the glow itself could betray her. "Britt and I are hitting the new wine bar," she said while grabbing a coat I hadn't seen before, a slick black thing with a cut sharper than our budget usually allowed. "Don't wait up." I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag still smelling of rebar dust, telling myself it was normal for a 30-something wife to want nights out with friends. But normal didn't explain the way her laughter rang brittle when she said it, or the way her eyes avoided mine just a beat too long. Later that week, she claimed she was headed to a work retreat in Plano, which sounded about as believable as a surf lesson in Amarillo. I let it go, until my buddy Kenny, who worked at a plumbing supply shop near downtown, pulled me aside. "Jack, you didn't hear this from me, but I saw Leah last Friday," he said, eyes darting. "She wasn't alone. Some guy in a suit, Omni Hotel lobby, looked familiar." The words hit like a sledge. Kenny wasn't one for drama. If he said it, he'd seen it. Props started falling into my lap like breadcrumbs from a story I didn't want to follow. A week later, while hunting for a spare pen in Leah's purse, I found a folded gas receipt, time-stamped 9:47 p.m., but from a station 30 miles south, nowhere near the office. I tucked it back, careful, my pulse hammering like I'd been caught stealing. That same night, our iPad lit up on the coffee table with a chirp. Leah was in the shower, steam hissing down the hall. I tapped the screen and froze. iMessage was open, synced to her phone. The top thread, a string of hearts, emojis, inside jokes I didn't understand, but enough words to split me down the middle. "Last night was worth the risk," it read. "Wish I could stay inside you forever." My throat closed. I snapped a screenshot, emailed it to myself, deleted the evidence from the iPad, and then sat there in silence as the shower water ran like applause for my humiliation. Concrete men learn early. Don't panic when cracks appear. Document them, track them, decide if they're cosmetic or structural. I started treating my marriage like a job site. I bought a cheap accordion folder at Walmart, labeled it evidence in block letters. Inside went the gas receipt, the screenshot, a hotel keycard I'd found earlier in her car, even the crumpled Capitol Grill bill that had first spooked me, filed under meals. I began a quiet ritual. When Leah left for girls' night, I'd pull out the folder, sit at the kitchen table under the hum of the fridge, and catalog my life like a detective piecing together someone else's tragedy. my breath shallow, jaw tight, hands steady the way they were on a float. Then came the credit card statement that ended any room for doubt. I opened it one Saturday while Leah was working late, the pages hot from the mailbox sun. There it was, Omni Hotel, 2 nights in a row. Dinner at Capitol Grill, bottle of Camus Cabernet that cost more than our electric bill. Spa charges. The timestamp on the dinner, 8:17 p.m., lined up exactly with the text she'd sent me that night. Running late at the office, don't wait up. The overlap was surgical. The receipt and her lie fit like tongue and groove. The more I looked, the clearer it got. A DNA test kit slipped out of her dresser drawer one morning while she searched for socks. She grabbed it fast, muttering something about Brit thinking of testing ancestry. But I'd already clocked the logo on the box, one of those kits people buy when they're not sure who belongs to who. I tucked that detail away, another sharp edge for the folder. My stomach turned at the thought. Was she planning to prove something about me, about us? I became a ghost in my own house, quiet as insulation, but recording everything. When she laughed into her phone in the backyard, I memorized the cadence. When she said love you with the wrong rhythm, I wrote the time down. The evidence folder grew thick, heavy as cinder blocks, the paper whispering to me at night from the drawer where I kept it. One evening, after Leah had left for another work dinner, I poured a whiskey, spread the folder open across the kitchen table, and looked at the mess of my life like a blueprint gone wrong. Gas receipts, hotel bills, iMessage screenshots, a key card, even a Walmart bag with lingerie tags still attached, items I hadn't seen on her body. I felt a strange calm, like the moment before a pour when the rebar is set and you just wait for the truck to back in. The silence wasn't suspicion anymore, it was confirmation. When Leah came home past midnight, makeup smudged but perfume fresh, she whispered, "Sorry, babe, long night." I stared at the TV, jaw tight, breath shallow, my hands resting on the folder, hidden in the drawer beside me. The timestamp on her text to me matched the hotel receipt. That's when I knew it wasn't suspicion anymore. It was proof. I chose the diner on Northwest Highway for the showdown, the kind of place with formica counters and bottomless coffee that tasted like burnt pennies. A public stage, cheap and bright, where secrets couldn't hide behind dim lights. I got there early, slid into a booth with my evidence folder heavy under my arm, and ordered bacon and eggs I had no plan to eat. When Leah walked in, heels clicking like a metronome, she wore a blouse I'd never seen before, silky, expensive, the kind a man in a suit probably bought. She smiled that too wide smile, the one meant to cut tension before it even sparks. "Jack," she said, sliding across from me, "what's this about? You sounded serious." My voice came out calm, steadier than my pulse. Serious is the right word. I placed the folder between us like a deck of cards in a game where the loser gets gutted. She rolled her eyes. A performance. "Oh my God, are we doing this? You've been so dramatic lately." I opened the folder. The gas receipt, the credit card bill, the iMessage printouts, all spread across the greasy tabletop. Diners looked up from their pancakes. A waitress froze with a coffee pot mid-pour. Leah's painted smile faltered, the corners sinking. "Where'd you get all this?" she whispered. "Doesn't matter," I said, my jaw tight, voice steady. "It's yours. Tell me I'm wrong." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "You're invading my privacy. You're obsessed." The line was pure gaslight, a last-ditch spark thrown on wet concrete. I didn't blink. "You said you were at the office. Omni Hotel says different. You said you were with Brit. Capitol Grill says you were with him. You said you loved me. These messages say otherwise." I tapped the screenshot where her lover had written, "Wish I could stay inside you forever." The diner went quiet, a silence thick as drywall dust. Phones came out. I saw the red record light of someone's TikTok. Leah's mask cracked then. She slammed her hands on the table, making silverware jump. "Fine. Yes. I needed more than you could give me. You think laying concrete makes you a man? He makes me feel alive, something you never did." Her words echoed through the diner, bouncing off chrome and coffee mugs. A kid in the next booth whispered, "World star," and his mom smacked his arm. The waitress gasped like she'd just watched a soap opera twist live. I let the silence hang, sipped my black coffee, and set the DNA envelope on the table like the final card in a poker game. "You laughed at my size with your ex," I said evenly. "You mocked the body that's carried bricks, scars, and sweat to keep us standing. That laughter, that was your choice. But this envelope, this tells me if the life you carry is mine or his. And if it isn't mine, Leah, then neither are you. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again, a storm in fast motion. You wouldn't, she hissed. I slid the envelope toward her. Already did. Around us, the diner held its breath. A man at the counter muttered, "Damn," into his omelet. The manager walked over, nervous. "Sir, maybe you want to take this outside." "No," I said, voice low but iron hard. "This belongs here, in the light." Leah stood so fast her chair screeched. She reached for the envelope, but I pulled it back, tucked it against my chest like a newborn. "Judge gets the final say," I told her, calm as a slab curing in the sun. "Not you, not me, a judge." Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened, but no sound came. The room around us felt like a jury box. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't stutter. In that moment, I wasn't the man she mocked. I was the man holding the gavel. She screamed then, a raw, ugly sound, half plea, half curse. People flinched. Phones zoomed in. A plate of pancakes slid off a tray somewhere in the back. And me? I just raised my coffee cup, sipped slow, and stared her down while the whole diner watched her unravel. As the cuffs closed on her wrists for disturbing the peace, yes, someone had called the cops when she shoved a chair. I didn't move. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just sat in that booth with my folder of receipts and lies, steady as bedrock, and thought, this is the pour that changes everything. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and stale coffee, the kind of place where lives get measured in signatures and gavels. 2 months after the diner scene, I stood there in boots that had poured foundations across Dallas, waiting for a judge to call my name. The DNA envelope had already done its damage. 0%. The baby wasn't mine. The test didn't care about tears or apologies. Numbers don't flinch. Leah sat 3 benches down, her makeup laid on thick like armor, but her eyes darted around the room, the way a trapped animal searches for exits. When the judge read the results, there wasn't a gasp this time, just silence, heavy and final. "Mr. Mercer, you are not the biological father," he said, gavel hitting the wood like thunder. I exhaled through my nose, steady, jaw tight, breath shallow. It was the sound of chains falling off. Divorce granted. Custody off the table. House retained. My name cleared, her reputation shredded. Back home, I changed the locks. The satisfying click of new deadbolts sliding into place was louder than any "I love you" she had ever whispered half-heartedly. I took her name off the joint credit cards, cut the plastic into jagged little pieces, and tossed them into a Bud Light box bound for the trash. No more surprise Omni Hotel charges. No more Capital Grille bills pretending to be work dinners. The house was mine again. My life was mine again. The healing didn't come all at once, but in small, ordinary doses. Saturday morning, my niece stayed over, and we made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, laughing when the batter spilled. She drew a crayon picture of us on the porch swing, stick figures with crooked smiles, and scrawled in bright red letters, "My Forever Team." I taped it to the fridge right where Leah's spa coupons used to hang. Sunday evening, my brother brought over a 6-pack, and we sat on the porch, beers sweating in our hands, watching the sky bleed into dusk. "You did the right thing, Jack," he said. "Sometimes peace is louder than revenge." I nodded, feeling the truth settle into me like a slab that had finally cured. I found myself listening to ESPN again, letting the noise of a game fill the room without reminding me of her absence. I dusted off the wedding photo and set it in a drawer, not to destroy it, but to put it in the psit where it belonged. On lonely nights, I'd flip through my evidence folder, the receipts and screenshots now brittle at the edges, and realize I didn't need them anymore. They were just artifacts, relics of a war I'd survived. I finally tossed them in the trash, watched the papers crumple into nothing, and felt lighter. Leah, meanwhile, tried to claw her way back. She texted apologies, voicemails dripping with regret. I was lost. He meant nothing. Can't we start over? But each message was weaker, like echoes in an empty hall. Her name became a ghost on my phone, one I didn't answer. I heard through the grapevine she'd moved in with the suit, only for him to ditch her once the drama turned public. Friends unfriended her, neighbors whispered. Dallas is big, but shame travels faster than traffic. Me? I started over. Bought a new mattress, fresh sheets. The first night I slept alone on them, I lay still and realized the silence was finally peaceful, not punishing. I could breathe. I could plan again. Maybe I'd take that road trip to Palo Duro solo, let the canyon wind remind me that time carves away pain until all that's left is beauty. Here's what I learned. Revenge feels sweet for a second, but peace tastes better every morning. You don't always leave because you stopped loving them. Sometimes you leave because you finally love yourself enough not to stay. And in the quiet of that truth, I understood something simple and American, carved into my bones like a motto. Sometimes the trash takes itself out.